So I was making a video right now and it just deleted. So I'm just gonna make a different video, which I was supposed to make tomorrow. I spoke on the games yesterday, but since that video erased, the quick recap is Dame needs the ball more. LeBron and the Lakers need to utilize D'Lo more. The Jazz beat the Wizards. The Timberwolves beat the Blazers. The Bulls miraculously beat the Kings in De'Aaron Fox's comeback. And the Grizzlies and the Nets had a battle from bad to bad, and the Grizzlies won because of Luke Cornett. That's basically the recap. I'm sorry, but now I'm getting into a topic which I really want to talk about. Who is the defensive player of the year? And I know a lot of people are just going to immediately blurt out, what do you mean? Or that's pretty obvious, or Victor Wembanyama, or Rudy Gobert. But what I'm saying is like Rudy Gobert and Victor Wembanyama is the defensive player of the year battle right now. And in my opinion, I don't think it's fair. And I don't think it's fair at all. Yes, Minnesota Timberwolves are the number one defense in the league. But we don't need to talk about the fact that the defensive player of the year is a defensive award based on the individual performance of a defensive player throughout a season. Yes, Rudy Gobert does anchor a lot of number one defenses. He's done it throughout his entire career. And I will say that his defense this season has been phenomenal. It looks like to be like when he was a defensive player of the year player. But let's not talk like Victor Wembanyama is not the best defensive player of the year that we've seen in the past maybe 4 or 5 seasons. And I'm sorry, but that's just the truth. He's averaging 3.4 blocks, 1.3 steals. He's averaging 2.2 offensive rebounds. Meanwhile, having the most win shares on his team. Meanwhile, having 7 wins created for his team approximately in a team that has 12 wins. Rudy Gobert, on the other hand, is averaging 2.1 blocks, 0.6 steals, 3.6 offensive rebounds, which is more than Wemby, and he's not generating the amount of wins that Wemby is doing for his team. Now, a lot of people want to talk about why is this a debate? Give it to Rudy, give it to Wemby. What are the factors that are making this interesting? For Rudy, the biggest factor is that his team is the best defensive team in the league. Now, I know that a lot of people want to say like, oh, but what does that have to do with him? Or that makes sense. Well, in that sense, when we look at it, the reason why is because the league values team defense for the defensive player of the year. For the MVP, the league looks at which team has the best player, right? And which player is on the best team. Those are normally the 2 factors that are looked at. For defensive player of the year, it works in the same manner. It's who's the best defensive player on the best defensive team. Now, there are some exceptions. Because this season, and as we know in the past few seasons, NBA defenses have not been what they normally are. And if we're being honest, defensive player of the year, in the same way that MVP is getting, changed and the definitions are getting, completely skewed, I think that we should talk about how defensive player of the year also needs to have a change. In my opinion, when we look at this season, Victor Wembanyama is clearly, very clearly the defensive player of the year, like that. I understand that he's a rookie. I understand that you don't want to give him awards in his first season, but come on, bro. Like, his team sucks defensively, but that has nothing to do with him. This man, especially after the All-Star break, seems like he's dropping 5 to 6 blocks every single game, which he has over his past 5 games, dropped 4 or more blocks in every single game. even dropping 6 in his win versus Indiana. And he has single-handedly carried his defense to any sort of, relatability when it comes to any sort of success. He doesn't have defensive players on his team, and let's face it, like his point guards, the Trey Jones, you have the Zach Collins, Malachi Brown. Like his team sucks defensively, right? Malachi Branham, Devin Vassell doesn't play defense, Keldon Johnson. And don't start talking to me about like Chetty Osman, Julian Champagne. Like, yes, they're amazing, but they're not great defensive players. Now, a lot of people want to say, so what does that mean in terms of Rudy Gobert? Well, Rudy Gobert, on the other hand, is having the complete opposite season. He's like the guy who's averaging 27 points on the first seed. Meanwhile, Victor Wembanyama is like averaging 34 points and 7 assists on the 4 seed. So a lot of people may say, well, you give the MVP to the guy who has the best team. And even though I agree, I just don't believe it's fair to Victor Wembanyama. I personally am not a fan of giving players praise, respect, or love if they don't deserve it. But I think that Victor Wembanyama has shown that as a defensive player, and especially as a shot blocker, rim protector, and offensive rebounder, this kid is something different. He is producing about 4.7, or you could round it up to 5. He's producing about 5 steals and blocks combined per game. Rudy Gobert is putting up about 2.5 or 3. So that is a whole block and steal more if you add them together. And individually with blocks and with steals, Victor Wembanyama is producing 1 more block a game than Rudy Gobert, and he's producing 1 more steal too. What that means is that Rudy Gobert, in terms of shot blocking and offensive rebounding, he is the player who you want to look at. I'm not denying that. I think he is probably the best player to win the award because he actually plays defense. He plays it well. He knows what to do, and he knows what coverage is and the way that they run it. Because the Timberwolves know how to play Rudy Gobert. Chris Finch has done a great job at that. But in my opinion, when we see Victor Wembanyama statistics, they're undeniable. And I'm sorry to make a video just on defense. I know a lot of people are not looking. But the stuff that this guy is doing when you just watch the games, not when you look at a box score. I'm going to stop focusing. But like the steal that he got where he fully extended himself to the front of the free throw line just to swipe it down and go forward and then cause a turnover. The blocking people's jump shots or around the rim or layups and making sure that people don't get in. The amount of fear that Victor Wembanyama is putting into opposing teams to not go into the paint is unlike any other player we've seen in the past year since Rudy was the defensive player of the year, which was in 2021. And even that season, I don't think he was putting as much pressure on the rim as Victor Wembanyama is now. And Rudy was a beast. Rudy was a beast in 2021, 2020, 2019. Like, Rudy was great. So when we speak on these things and when we speak on the defensive stats and really watching or at least paying attention to how coverages change because of certain defensive players, like Rudy is obviously a product of his defense. There's a lot of great perimeter defenders around the Minnesota Timberwolves. Anthony Edwards, Jalen McDaniels. You have Cat, which can actually now guard on the perimeter all of a sudden a little bit. And then you have Slow-Mo, which also can keep himself at least steady in terms of the defensive game. When you see the Spurs, they have nobody. They have to send everyone to Victor so he cleans them up. But teams don't want to go to Victor because they all know they'll get swatted. And that, in my opinion, is the defensive player of the year, and that's why I think Victor Wembanyama should win it.